I'm Bruce Martin, and my Ojibwe name is actually Ishkote Makwa, and I grew up among the Ojibwe, the southern Ojibwe of northern Minnesota and also Ontario, Lake of the Woods, the northwest angle, which is part of the Red Lake Nation. I was not at all attracted to, and I did not think that students would really learn what needed to be learned by reading textbooks and sitting and listening to me or anyone else in a classroom. That's not how I learned about the culture or learned the culture, not just about the culture. I learned it because I lived among the people. I also knew that often Indigenous people are not properly represented in that context. Their philosophies, their worldview, their customs, their traditions, their life ways are not always properly represented in those texts or in those educational sort of venues. And so I began to look for ways to actually take the classroom to, in this case, Indian country, to the Indigenous community itself. For most American students, there isn't a connection there between their language and culture. You know, we've borrowed from so many places, I think, in constructing this language, that it's not rooted in a place. And it's a language of nouns, primarily nouns. We tend to make objects of everything in this language. It's just the reverse for Ojibwe people. It's a language of verbs. It's a language that's animate. It's a language that reflects the philosophy, the worldview. If you know the language, you know that the world around you is alive in ways that most Americans don't even imagine. You know, the rocks are alive, and they have spirit. And in the Ojibwe worldview, anything with spirit you can have a relationship with. And it changes sort of that place, that sense of belonging in the world, this place in the world, because for American students, they don't have that kind of relationship with the world around them. It's all objectified. It's separate. And the language is that way. When you know the Ojibwe language, you know what's animate and inanimate. And there's much more in the world that's animate than inanimate. I used to guide people around Lake of the Woods, the northwest angle, when they would come up and visit and they'd go fishing or whatever. And, you know, the first 10 years of my life I spent in the Western world pretty much. And so when I went there, I would want to do what a good Western, person would do. They would ask someone where the best fishing hole is, or they would get a gadget that lets you know where the fish are. That's the way we do that. Well, Ojibwe people have a different way of doing it, and they'll walk to the edge of the lake in the morning, and they'll stand there for 15 minutes, and they'll read the lake. I mean, literally read the lake, and they'll come away from that moment, those moments, and they'll know the weather for the day pretty well, and they'll know what's going to be happening on the lake and where the fish are. I'll get in my boat and go with my gadget, and I get some fish, and they go without, and they'll get just as many or more. I don't know how to explain that in our language, in our way of talking about things. I don't know how to talk about that. And it gets that way when you get into the spirit world, too, for the Ojibwe people. Don't know how to talk about that in our scientific and technological sort of framework, because it's a different way of knowing altogether. Is that not knowledge? Of course it is. Is it knowledge that will transfer to, from Lake of the Woods in Minnesota to the Atlantic Ocean? I don't know. Maybe not. because it's a different place. When Ojibwe people introduce themselves, they make sure you understand the limits of their knowledge by introducing their clan, their tribe, their community, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, all this connection that they have, this relationship that they have. Because they're saying to you, this is where my knowledge comes from, and this is where it ends. Outside of that, you and I are the same. We're in the same boat. We don't know much. You see, I like that.